Welcome to the My Amazon Guy podcast. This is your host, Stephen Pope. Today I'll be talking to Kevin Strawbridge, an experienced CEO and entrepreneur. Kevin was the manager of JCPenney's business development. He's been the CEO of ClickBanks and is a leader of many other companies in his past. I'm now joined by Kevin. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Stephen.
So Kevin, for our listeners' sake, walk them through how we met up.
Sure. So about 4 years ago, I was appointed as the president for a division of a company called MAG, Motorsport Aftermarket Group, and we had a retail division there. I was the president of that division. We sold aftermarket gear parts and accessories for motorcycles, and the two brands that were under our name were Motorcycle Superstore and J&P Cycles. And we had done a pretty good job of getting out into the Amazon space because our sister company was a distributor. We were the retail face. We also had a brands group that was within the family of companies. And we knew that we needed to bring somebody onto our team that had a lot of Amazon experience. And so as most people know, Harry Joyner's a pretty connected person in the space. And you and I were introduced through Harry, and you came in and spent a good amount of time talking with us and consulting with us on what we were doing from not only an Amazon perspective, but an overall digital marketing perspective and that customer experience piece that was so vital. So you and I saw a lot of things the same way. Not that anything ever came of that relationship directly through MAG, but we've continued to be business colleagues and friends for now a better part of 4 years, getting a chance to sort of learn from one another and share with one another, advise one another. And it's definitely been one of the most beneficial relationships I've had in my e-commerce experience.
I can say the same thing. Kevin has referred countless clients our way, and I really appreciate that. Thank you, Kevin. You're definitely a very well-networked individual and have a good business sense. And I think a lot of people come to you and ask for advice all the time because of it. But you've been doing Amazon for a long time, dating back to your JCPenney time?
Yep, that's correct, Stephen. Back in 2001, I joined JCPenney in the early part of 2001, the JCPenney Direct group, as a matter of fact, where JCPenney.com resided. At that time, the company had done around $200 million in what was really catalog sales through an online website. And a new group of leaders were brought into JCPenney, of which I was one, to look at ways that we could develop more of a true online experience for JCPenney.com. That meant getting people away from the old notion of pulling out a catalog, looking up a lot number, typing it into a screen, and hitting order.
That brings
we tried to find more ways. Yeah, exactly. We tried to find more ways that we could help develop that true shopping experience online for people. But what was interesting is at that same time, here's this little company out of Seattle called Amazon that was way more debt-laden than it was equity-laden at the time. And they were quickly developing an online presence and an e-commerce presence. As a matter of fact, they had just recently launched the Target website, where Amazon fully powered Target's website. Most people don't know that, it was part of their business model. They were selling their services, much like some other companies do today, where they were going to power people's back end and really create the whole end-to-end e-commerce experience. And Target was a great name to start with. Well, as JCPenney, coming up on 100 years old, we definitely were the leaders in the space in terms of direct-to-consumer catalog, and then also direct-to-consumer e-commerce. And we felt, from a Sun Tzu Art of War perspective, it was best to keep our friends close and keep our enemies closer. So we knew we had to go play in that Amazon pool and learn what the program was at the time called Merchants at Platform worked. And I was responsible for developing the entire strategy and then tactical implementation of getting JCPenney onto the Merchants at Platform with Amazon between 2002 and 2003.
So what was that like in the early days of Amazon?
It was really interesting. So again, they were running at 100 million miles an hour, much like they do today, but they weren't the leader. They were the learner. Now they're the leader. But back then, a lot of what we did as a company from a marketing perspective and a merchandising perspective, really even, our ability to understand our customers from a catalog perspective, and now this emerging online space, we did a lot of teaching to them in terms of how a lot of those things worked. And so, of course, Amazon wanted to build out their catalog and be as big as they could and have as much online as they possibly could. They wanted our entire assortment of SKUs on their website. We actually chose to only do our JCPenney brands on the Amazon site to be able to produce a better experience for customers. We ran our file up against their file. And it was interesting to find out that there was only a 5% overlap between their customer base and our customer base. And so it was a unique lead generation tool for us. We were able to develop a lead gen tool that basically got new customers to the JCPenney house file for less than $18 per customer.
Wow.
We were spending over $23 per customer even through JCPenney. And it gave us the ability to get our JCPenney product in front of a lot of people that didn't necessarily know that it existed. So those things like JCPenney towel, Pro Silk Classics, Arizona brand jeans, those types of things. And we ended up putting about 72,000 SKUs out on Amazon, attracting a lot of new customers. We, over the course of the 2.5 years that it was running, generated about 80,000 new customers to file for JCPenney.com.
So one thing that I think you could articulate and speak to that many other businesses can't is high catalog count SKU businesses. I mean, even Mag Retail Group was north of 100K, if I remember correctly. So you've done
north of $1 million.
Oh my goodness. At least I remember 100K for Amazon specifically. So what's the difference between running, say, a 10 SKU brand versus a 100K plus brand, in your opinion?
Well, with a 100K plus brand, you get the opportunity to sort of have more of a shotgun approach because you can capture a lot more keywords from an SEO perspective. You can target a lot more customers from a paid search perspective. But really being able to have that breadth of assortment out there that really there's a chance anybody will buy what you have is extremely interesting and viable. Now, on the flip side, I also worked for a company called Collectibles Today up in Chicago, and we sold collectible items. We had 3,200 SKUs, and that was it. They were all limited edition items. And what it taught us, and the colleagues that I worked with there, was we had to be very surgical and very segmented in how we went after customers. We couldn't go spend countless dollars on paid search or email sprays or any other things just to try to hopefully get a customer. We had to know in a very targeted fashion how to go find a very specific customer to sell that very small set of SKUs to.
So that's pretty interesting. What do you think is harder or easier, low SKU or high SKU?
Depends on the day. No. I would say high SKU is easier. And again, because you've got a lot broader customer base and the opportunity of casting your net and finding a fish is much greater than the targeted one. But once you find, what I'll add to that is once you find a segment of people that are buying a small SKU base, once you get in there and you get the right message and you apply that message correctly, the return on investment is extremely big.
So if you were going to start an Amazon business today, what would be the strategy that you would implement? Would you go out and buy a brand? Would you start with 5 SKUs and just go manufacture it yourself? What would you do?
That's interesting you would ask, because I've actually been looking at both opportunities, and as I know you have in the things that you've done as well. I have been spending a lot of time looking at a lot of both FBA companies and what I call niche e-commerce businesses, companies that have low SKU count type interesting products that have a meaningful value to our current economy and our current society. Then I've also looked at what are some products that I could develop and or sell. I tend to be more on the side of wanting to be inventive on things. So I want to go find the next pet rock and I want to sell it as opposed to the next Apple phone case, right? So like I see a lot of Apple phone case businesses go by, or outerwear or glassware or all these different things. And I think, well, okay, what's the point of differentiation there? There's not much. So sure, I can go make sort of my onesie-twosie dollars here and there. But what's that thing that I could develop that would be sort of life-changing, at least get out ahead of the curve until, somebody like an Amazon or somebody else comes out and knocks it off, and try to make that money on it. So I haven't committed to either one of those yet, but I am spending a lot of time looking as deep as I can on those things.
Yeah, and I think there's 2 types of products on Amazon to kind of bucket things. I think there's co-opting demand. That's where you're going out for the Apple phone case, and creating demand, which is the next pet rock. And I think you articulated that quite well. It's much harder to build the pet rock business, but I think you're right. It's absolutely way more lucrative if done correctly.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, what I have to be really careful of is not being a focus group of one. So just because I found something that changes my life and I think, oh my gosh, everybody in the world must want this, I really have to step back and poll a lot of people. If I look at my wake, there are, probably a couple of dozen product ideas and or service ideas that never came to fruition. At least I think because I was prudent enough and smart enough to talk to enough people to get a broader view on it to say, maybe there isn't a solution here that makes a lot of sense. Now, do I want somebody to say, hey, this is a 1 in a million idea and we can sell a million of them? Absolutely. But I'm also, I think, smart enough and prudent enough not to go out and kill my life savings or an investor's an investor's investment on trying something that doesn't have a lot of viability to it.
So for those that already have an Amazon business, what kind of advice would you give them to improve sales right now?
Hire my Amazon guy. I mean, aside from that, no, but I'm being dead serious about that. It's funny because I have a lot of people that cross my path that either have an Amazon business or they want to get into an Amazon business, or they're augmenting their business with an Amazon approach, using it as a channel. The first thing I always tell them is you can spend all the time you want learning. All that time you spend learning is dollars spent and time spent, and you're not probably going to get as far down the road as you can. So what I do tell people is, and I do refer my Amazon guy, I make no bones about that. But the opportunity to have a smart person in your corner that understands the ins and outs is extremely valuable. And I say that from the perspective of just like with e-commerce, I advise a company here in Dallas that sells high-end home goods. And I got hooked up with them before they even had a website. And I was able to sit down with them and tell them there's a landmine right there, and there's a landmine right there, and there's a landmine right there. Don't step on those, right? Go around them, and here are the ways that you can avoid that. And so because of that, saving that time and saving that money gets you to a faster return on the investment that you're looking for.
And so right now we're going to turn our attention over to kind of Corona and COVID-19 with all the news and impact with that. So I've got a client that sells toilet paper. In the last 24 hours, they sold about, $100,000 in toilet paper. They completely sold out. We're seeing a lot of random things happening right now. So what are your thoughts on the current situation with Corona, and let's tie it into e-commerce and kind of what you think the impact might be?
Well, it's interesting. So, I can use an example here at our house. We're not extremists in any way, shape, or form. I believe that every life is valuable and precious, and anytime there's a loss of life, there's something that has to be thought of there. I do think that there's going to be a full spectrum of things. My daughter even said this today. You go sort of from the irrational to the rational, and I would say the majority of us hopefully fall in that center band of the bell curve. The irrational are out probably buying, thousands of rolls of toilet paper. Not sure why, but that's what they're buying. And then there's the rational that are saying, you know what, we probably need to add a little bit to our stock, and we need to make sure that we're smart about that. So my wife went to the store yesterday, and shelves were cleared of canned goods and all these different products. And so my immediate response was, let's hop online. Let's go buy from some companies that are selling online. Let's have it delivered to us. It solves a couple of problems. One, everybody's going to go to the store because it's right down the street and they're going to clear it out. Two, if somebody's bringing it to your house and dropping it at your doorstep, you don't have that interaction with people that's probably a smart way to avoid doing that, being around a lot of people right now. And so with things like e-commerce, much like, we talked about when gas prices were $4 and $5 a gallon, that ability to not go out and drive around a parking lot and look for a parking spot and drive to the next door and the next door and the next door. You can go online. You can be smart and prudent about the things that you're looking for, surgical in the discovery that you're making, buying the products that you need, and frankly, having the ability to price check things right there as well gives you that ability to make smart purchases that are delivered to your home that solves the problem that you have at hand. We have a problem at hand with coronavirus and COVID-19. It's something that I do believe will pass over a period of time, and being able to use a channel like an online channel to make prudent purchase decisions is certainly helpful.
So there's obviously a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of people are uncomfortable. But I guess what I've seen, 10 accounts that I currently run right now have had record weeks 2 out of the last 3 weeks. And so I think right now we're going to see a spike in e-commerce, and Amazon's going to be really benefited by this. So if I was, going to go start a new business right now, obviously I'm not going to suggest go do hand sanitizer and toilet paper, but it's a pretty good time to be selling online right now, don't you think?
I agree. And again, you've also got the situation where people are sort of building up demand because they're sitting at home and they've got time in front of a computer screen and they're able to act on that. And so to your point, yeah, I wish I could figure out what the business is to start or the product there is to sell. And I probably will spend more time thinking about that in the coming days. And the reciprocal of that is true. I mean, for all the toilet paper that's being sold right now, I joked with a friend of mine yesterday. I said, I think in about 2 months, I'm going to go short Kimberly-Clark because they're going to sell all this toilet paper and all those people are going to have it in their houses. And in Q2 and Q3 of this year, nobody's going to need to buy any.
Yeah, and nobody needs it.
Yep.
So I think that's entirely possible too. So I look at Corona and I say, this is feeling like a once in a 100 year event. I mean, when was the last time you ever heard of schools across the country closing and everything shutting down? The NBA shuts down, everything going on. So, you probably as a business entrepreneur and business leader have probably been through Black Swans events like this before, highly improbable, unpredictable events that happen. So is there another Black Swan that you can think of? And it could be a small scale event, but like what have you been through and how did you steer your business through that?
Well, it's interesting, and I hate to reference this one, but 9/11 was definitely a Black Swan event, and there were some very interesting things that I think we still see today that are cascading from that. So, September 11th, 2001, I was working at JCPenney.com, and I'll never forget that day. I'll never forget looking out the window from our 11th-story building and not seeing a single plane in the sky. And realizing that there was a big shift that happened in the world. And so from an online perspective, we got into the whole notion of understanding that people were going to move from this sort of being out, doing a lot of things to more of this nesting approach. And JCPenney happened to benefit from that in the fact that we sold a lot of home goods. We sold a lot of soft goods. We sold a lot of basics. And so the ability for people to get the things that they needed, have them delivered to their home and sort of stay home and stay safe was very important to them. I think we're going to see a little bit of that happen here again. I think this would probably go away in a lot faster in terms of how people are reacting to it, just because it is a cycle and a season. And we, and you brought this up to me, I think a week ago when we were talking, is we're going to see sort of a wave of this kind of come down on the other side, but then it's going to come back up again next year, just like happened with SARS. Just like happened with swine flu, you're going to see the next tail on this come. And I think what's going to happen from an online perspective is you're going to see people becoming more beholden to utilizing that data-specific tool and that ability to buy something and have it delivered in front of them as a viable way to keep moving their lives forward.
So you started talking about the business cycle. Business cycles definitely ebb and flow quite a bit. So what do you think the impact to the current business cycle is going to look like? What do you strategize that you should be doing right now as you run a business? This is kind of my running way of running a business, and I always tend to be more conservative from a fiscal nature. I'm a big fan of how South West Airlines has always run their business. They run their business year in and year out as though things are going to be bad the next year. They don't run their business year in and year out as though everything's going to be up to the right forever. And so, the whole notion of being smart about what you're spending money on, having the right people in the right seats to do the job that's required, as you're developing a revenue stream and cash flow from that, making sure that you're prudent about how that money is either being reinvested in your business to create more value or is being put into savings so that you can benefit from it at a later time. And I think it's important that more, especially small companies, look at that. I'm on LinkedIn every day. I'm on Twitter every day. I'm seeing these stories of people who are being laid off from their jobs already because of what's going on with COVID-19. And they're literally saying, I need help. I can't make it 2 weeks without a job. And my thought is, right. And my thought is, again, proper planning. You fail to plan to fail. And so if you're at a point where you're living on that edge, figure out a way to come back slightly from the edge. You may have to give up a little bit of revenue or a little bit of profit here and there, but by doing that and reinvesting properly or saving properly, you're going to see a magnified value that goes on down the road. The companies that aren't suffering, that you won't hear much from,
they're going to be the ones that are going to, they're feeling it. They just don't have to say anything because they don't have to show that they're feeling it because they've got the reserves in place to take care of the situation. When you hear about the airlines that are going to suffer because of the shutdowns and what's happening from a travel perspective, South West Airlines isn't one of the ones that's talking about it. It's Delta Airlines, it's American Airlines, it's United Airlines, because they're living on the edge of whether or not they're profitable or not.
I really wish more of the economy and more of our American culture would plan for the worst, kind of like you mentioned. It would be a really big shift, and we wouldn't have as much blowback or crisis as when the next bubble gets the pin that pops it, right? Because clearly we're in a bubble. It's increasingly obvious. The COVID-19 was just the pin that pops it. But all right, so we'll leave the Corona conversation behind. Let's go just a little bit more flowery or generic here. So what excites you about being an entrepreneur these days?
The thing I think that excites me most about being an entrepreneur is that ability to create something, to create value, to find the ability to save time, to save people money, to build an item or to build a service that gets people out of their norm and again, anything I can do to help support the ability for people to save time and money, I'm going to do all day, every day. One of the jobs we didn't talk about that I had was I was the president of dealtaker.com, which was one of the leading online deals and coupons websites in the country. We were the 15th largest, as a matter of fact, when I ran it. And we prided ourselves on the fact of being able to save people time and money. As an entrepreneur, anything that I can do to do that would be great. The second thing is it's becoming a little bit of a generational impact for me. I've gotten older. I've been working in e-commerce, digital marketing, operational activities for 25 years now in my career. And I'm now realizing that there's another generation that's coming in behind me that I get to impart knowledge to, that I get the opportunity to say, there's a landmine, don't step on it. And so from an entrepreneurial perspective, the coaching and mentoring that I can bring to that and the ability to, find a way to help people that are super smart or gifted in finding that next service or product. I want to be there to help be the support for them to go forth and be very positive and beneficial in that area.
It's definitely rewarding to be a mentor, and that's really awesome of you. All right, so last question for you, Kevin. What book have you recently read or are reading right now that you think everybody should go out and buy?
I just read it again for the third time, and I'm reading Built to Last by Jim Collins. And, Built to Last is one of those books that it's like a movie that comes on a Saturday afternoon. I'll flip by and go, oh, you know what, I'm going to watch that movie again. I already know how it ends, and I already know what the beneficial high points of it are. But when I think about Built to Last, the ability to work on building a company, and again, having that mentality of we're not just building it for today and tomorrow, we're building it for tomorrow and next week and next month and next decade and next millennium. That's the book that always comes back to me as the thing I love to read.
So that's a great tie-in. Well, thank you guys for listening to the My Amazon Guy podcast. Please make sure you subscribe to our podcast and tell 3 other people about it. We would very much appreciate that. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Stephen.